Those of us who use both Mac and Windows and Linux and other operating systems all the time kind of smile when people act terrified about switching from one to the other. But I understand it. It's a little scary if you've only used Windows for a long time. The thought of another operating system might terrify you, but in truth it's not that different. 99% of the genetics are the same. They're all computers, but there are a few differences that if you know ahead of time, won't bug you as much. And that's why the Macmedic is here. This transition to Windows, or from Windows to Mac, is just getting a little bit easier. Jeff Barrett is from Macmedics, and now you probably never used Windows.
Rarely, only if I absolutely must.
Right. So you're a Mac, not merely a Macmedic, but a Mac addict, a Mac bigot, a Mac user.
Mac advocate.
You wave the flag.
I do.
So show us some things that Windows users should be aware of as they make this.
Well, I'm running virtual PC on here, so I've got Windows on my Mac.
Isn't
the
that
old-fashioned way,
right.
Or the new way, you can actually run it natively.
Right.
But I get a lot of questions from my clients. How can I get my data from my Windows box to my Mac once I've bought my Mac? And there's a few tools out there that I like to use. There's one in particular that I'm really, really loving. It's part of my arsenal when my clients ask me, how do I get my data out of my PC? You can use CDs and DVDs as far as transferring the information, but the hardest information to get out of the Windows box, I find, is the Outlook information.
That's true, because it's in a really proprietary format. It's
you know, your Word files, your Excel files, that's simple. Your music files, that's not hard to get out.
Right.
But your contacts, your calendar, all of that stuff, very difficult to get out. But there's a great piece of software called O2M. Okay. Formerly Outlook to Mac, by a company called Little Machines. And it's a very basic program, costs $10.
Great.
You run it on the Windows machine. Mm-hmm. It exports your contacts and calendar information into formats that are compatible with the Mac. So you get it into iCal, Address Book, even Entourage, Microsoft's Entourage for
It's
Mac.
ironic. You'd think Entourage would read Outlook files.
It just doesn't.
They're both Microsoft products.
They're just the Mac, I guess. It's just not doing it, unfortunately. I'm going to launch O2M here, and it's a very, very basic interface. It says, what do you want to do? I want to transfer my email attachments, contact, etc.
You don't really have much choice, do you?
You click the next button. Okay. It says, okay, where do you want to put it? It creates a folder called My Outlook Files for you. You click next. It says, what do you want to transfer? You actually have a list of all your boxes that are in Outlook.
Is there anything it doesn't get? Does it get notes? Does it get
everything?
Wow.
Everything. So I'm just going to
journal entries.
Journal entries. I don't get journal entries.
Wow.
I'm just going to pick a couple small boxes for our purposes.
You may not want your junk mail.
That's right.
You can leave that
I'm going to click next. I can convert all my email regardless of the date, or I can just get certain dates that I want, date ranges. As far as the size of files, maybe there's certain attachments I don't want to get.
Yeah, you don't want the 10 megabyte attachments.
In this case, I've got very little, so I'm skipping that. Do I want to skip certain file types? We can't run exe files on the Mac.
Right.
And so files that have those, I'm going to sort of skip. In this case, in this demo, I'm just going to go really simple.
All the contacts?
Contacts.
And it preserves all the category information and all that stuff?
Well, right here is where you sort of choose. Do you want to get it directly into Apple's address book, or do you want to use it for other programs, so VCF, vCard files, which is a standard format. So I'm going to choose vCard files, and so every contact gets put into an individual vCard, so you can drag and drop those into address book, into Entourage's address book as well, accepts that type of transfer.
Right.
Do I want to, this I don't really like, because you only have two kind of categories, work and home. And this is where the transition gets a little dicey sometimes, because you might have to do some tweaking after the fact.
Now that's a limitation, we should say, of Apple's address.
That's right.
It only has work or
It
home.
is a limitation, there's no doubt about it. And do I want to move my calendar appointments over? Definitely want to do that. Again, do I want it to be iCal native or other program native? So there's ICS files to import into.
And we should emphasize that both the VCF business card format and the ICS calendar format are, address book and iCal can use those. So
Definitely.
You're not leaving anybody out by choosing that.
Well, one of the really cool things now about Microsoft Entourage for OS X, the latest version supports Apple's sync services. So I can get all my data into iCal and address book, but then I just turn on my sync services in Entourage, and it transfers all that information to Entourage.
That's great.
So it's
really
actually
nice.
transferring to two programs at once that way.
That's great, yeah.
Next, I want to convert all my appointments regardless of the date, et cetera, et cetera. How many invitees? It's just all really basic questions that you can answer.
This is a good deal for $10.
For $10, it's easy. So you just do the start. It's pretty quick. I've only got a few contacts.
You may want to walk away at this point.
You may want, if you have a lot of information, you're definitely going to have to walk away.
Right.
I'm going to let it run. I'm going to stop it because I've already done this beforehand for you. Then once you've got that information, you could burn it, transfer it over to your Mac either through CD or
Does
network.
any issue come up with CDs I burn on Windows, reading them on the Mac? There should
be no problem with that whatsoever.
The data file form, I could even put it on, I guess, external hard drive.
Yeah, it's just things like programs you can't run. So you've got program files. That's not going to happen. Data files are fine. In fact, here they are. These are the files that it created. It created separate folders for contacts, calendar, and mail. When I open up the mail, it's mboxes. Very standard format.
That's a standard format, a Unix format.
Which I can drag and drop into Entourage, for example.
Apple understands that.
Apple understands that. So if I bring up my Entourage here, go into Mail, I can literally drag and drop.
Do you recommend Entourage for your Windows using, your Outlook using clients? Do you think that they're more comfortable because they've used Outlook?
I think if you're making the transition and you have a copy of Entourage, you will feel more comfortable.
Yeah. So, because Word's the same, Excel's the same.
That's right.
But Entourage isn't quite Outlook.
That's right. And Apple Mail, I mean, I love Apple Mail. It's got some great features. Yeah. But for comfort level, you could go to Entourage. You could then migrate to Apple Mail very easily later on once you get more acquainted with the Mac. So I just transferred that inbox. It shows up as a sub box of my inbox, which I can move around. My messages are there, including their attachments. It's brilliant that way.
What is it called?
O2M from LittleMachines.com.
Very cool
$10.
Utility.
Yeah.
Jeff Barrett is a Macmedic, one of Canada's top Mac support consultancies, which you can find at macmedics.ce.